Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you are well. If you could, as we get going here and waiting for some of our friends and colleagues to join, if you can post in the chat where you are joining us from today. I'm going to start here. I'm in Izmir, Turkey. And we have, yes, excellent. Thank you, everybody. Keep posting here. Let us know where you are. While you're doing that, I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us for today's Tech Tuesday session on gamified learning for skill growth, motivation, and persistence. To begin, I just want to acknowledge the important work that you all do every day. As we know, adult education learners often arrive carrying significant responsibilities with their jobs, their families, financial pressures, transportation challenges, and sometimes previous educational experiences that weren't the most positive. So, our challenge as educators is not only helping learners acquire skills, but it's also helping them to stay engaged long enough to achieve their goals. So I'm hoping that's what today's conversation is going to support you in doing, and specifically around how gamification becomes particularly valuable in this pursuit. Okay. All right. Can everyone hear me okay? I just got, I see Betty, you're saying you get an echo. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. All right. Great. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that quick feedback, everybody. All right. So, my name is Ramin Yazdan Pana, and my focus is on helping educators such as yourself translate research into practical instructional strategies that support our adult learners in achieving their educational, career, and personal goals. Often, when people hear the word gamification, they sometimes think about video games or entertainment. Today, I want to broaden that definition. We're going to explore how simple instructional design strategies, many of which you may already be using, can increase motivation, engagement, persistence, and skill development in adult education settings. Most importantly, we'll focus on approaches that are realistic, that are flexible and applicable, whether you're teaching ESOL, ABE, GED, workforce preparation, or integrated education and training programs, and also applicable in a variety of settings. So that's the goal here of today's presentation. A quick reminder to please feel free to use the Q&A box for any questions. Uh, you're going to be in listen only mode for this session, but everything is being recorded. So you will receive a link to that recording, or actually you'll see that recording posted on the IPDAE site along with the slide deck here. Okay, so the recording will be available to you on the IPDAE website um, within 24 hours of the end of our session here today. So even though that you are in listen only mode, I promise you we're going to be engaging and interactive here today. Okay, so stay with me here, and thank you all for your excellent engagement in the chat so far. So by the end of today's session, you should be able to analyze how gamification can support motivation, reinforce learning, and increase persistence, how to better adapt gamified activities to different instructional goals and delivery formats, and how to apply practical gamification strategies that promote progression and skill mastery across adult educational content areas. So we can think about these as our three levels for today's learning journey. So let's start with a quick reflection. In the chat, please respond to the following. What is one challenge you face with learner motivation or persistence? Just think about that for a second. And the first thing that comes to mind, put it in the chat. Again, what is one challenge you face with learner motivation or persistence. So some examples as you're kind of thinking there can be things like competing work, family, life responsibilities, inconsistent attendance, maintaining momentum, discouragement due to slow progress, lack of confidence, engagement, not only inside of class but outside of class. Those are just some examples. And let me come to the chat here and see, Christina, thank you. Attendance is yeah, that's one that's a common one, right? Uh, we have two Christinas, student fatigue, keeping everyone engaged. Yeah, Ruth says, they want immediate results. Okay. Janine, different levels, multi-levels in the classroom. Um, wow, you guys are, you know what the what the challenges are right here. Um, okay, so yeah, attendance, engagement, um, giving everyone a chance to play, right? When using games or exercises, making rewards salient. Why am I doing this? I'll never use this. Great. Thank you all for that excellent feedback. Okay, so I think that we're in the right place here because we're going to be addressing some of these different challenges that really we all face, as educators. Hey, and many of us face these same challenges as lifelong learners, right? These are just very real challenges that everybody has, but especially adult learners. So, why does this matter? Okay, so research consistently shows that persistence is one of the biggest challenges in adult education. As you know, many learners are balancing competing priorities, irregular schedules, family obligations, work responsibilities. Often learners don't leave because they lack ability, they leave because life gets busy and life gets in the way, right? So research also points to that persistence is often the determining factor in whether adult learners achieve their goals. Gamification can help by making progress visible, which in turn creates more opportunities for learners to experience success. So let me ask you here, which best describes your use of gamification? So we're going to launch this poll here and choose A, not using, B, tried using, once or twice, C, occasionally, and D, regularly. What kind of best describes your use of gamification? And give you a little bit of time to. There's three choices here: not using, tried once or twice, or regularly. Okay, give you about 5 more seconds. All right, so let's see what you all chose here. Okay, wow, I love this spread here. Okay, so about 30% not using, tried once or twice, 43% regularly, about 30%. Excellent, excellent spread here. All right, thank you all. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so you can see that our use here and of gamification really kind of exists on a spectrum. So you don't need to be sophisticated and have sophisticated apps or badges or digital pro platforms to begin using gamification effectively. Many educators are already using aspects of gamification without calling it that. So keep that in mind as we are moving forward, especially those who said that you're either not using it currently or used it once or twice. Let's see if we can expand our understanding of gamification strategies and see how we're already using those kind of strategies as well as how we could apply those strategies moving forward. So let's define gamification. What is gamification? Gamification is not simply playing games in class. Okay, gamification is the intentional use of game elements to increase engagement and motivation. Some examples include progress tracking, right? As we see here, visual dashboards showing progress towards goals is one example. Immediate feedback, right? So what are the feedback systems that we're using? One of you all pointed that out, right? That students are really like seeking kind of immediate feedback and clarity on their work and on their progress. So how can we create these kind of feedback systems, for example, through instant quiz feedback, with explanations? Meaningful challenges, right? Real life tasks with increasing difficulty. And we'll talk a little bit about that here shortly. Learner voice and choice and what they're learning and how they engage. For example, options for how to demonstrate learning. Are they going to write something? Are they going to speak something? Are they going to complete some kind of role play? Are they going to get creative and express their learning in some kind of like production kind of way? And then a clear pathway towards goals, right? Structuring learning tracks leading to clear outcomes. So I think you can see here that many successful adult education programs already use these elements. The difference is that gamification makes them more intentional and more visible. So let's talk a little bit here about some frameworks that are going to help us to contextualize and provide some framing around gamification. So there's two important theories that can help explain why gamification can be so effective. The first is self-determination theory. And this theory suggests motivation increases when learners experience autonomy, competence, right, or progress, and relatedness, right, or connection. So, in plain terms, learners want choices. Learners want to feel capable that they're making progress. And learners want to feel connected to others in the classroom and outside, in their communities. The second framework is expectancy value theory. And this describes how learners persist when they believe they can succeed and when they see value in what they're doing. All right, I'm going to repeat that again. Learners persist when they believe that they can succeed and when they see value in what they are doing. So let's think about our own experiences, right? When something feels impossible or irrelevant, motivation drops, right? So that is oftentimes an upstream issue to address and understanding, engaging with our learners so they can identify, right? One, the issue here about what are their preconceptions about their ability to learn. This is especially relevant for adults who often think that they're too old to learn, right? If you look back at some a previous webinar I've done, we talked about that, right? Just dispelling these myths around the ability for students to be for adult learners to be lifelong learners, all right? And how throughout our lives we have the ability to create new neural pathways to learn things and to unlearn other things. So another is that this belief of like, what is the value, right? And so that leads to something that I've really seen time and time again with adult learners, especially, is that they need to see the rationale. They need to understand the rationale. That's a strength of adult learners, is that they can understand that, right? Not only can they understand that, but they oftentimes need that in order to contextualize what they're learning and how that connects to outcomes and to their goals. All right. So gamification can strengthen both confidence and perceived value. So this all connects directly to andragogy. Okay, the study of adult learning. And andragogy points to the fact that adults need relevance. Okay, we need to know that learning matters now and connects to real life, as I mentioned before. We need clarity and clear purpose, right? When they see expectations and tasks are clear, things become easier. It lowers the cognitive load. So when we don't have clarity and we don't have clear purpose, this creates stress and disorder. And what we need to learn is to lower stress, right? To have an open mind and to have organization and structure. And finally, agency, where learners have some control through voice and choice in their learning. So these are some questions to kind of reflect on is, in our current instruction, is it relevant? Is it clear? Does it have structure? Are there routines? Are expectations clear? And is there agency allotted to our adult learners? So engagement grows when learning feels purposeful and respectful, where learning recognizes and leverages learner strengths and directly addresses learner needs and goals. Gamification can make progress visible, can connect learning to outcomes, and can enable learners to build ownership in their learning. All right, so a lot of information there. Let's just take a breath here. And we're going to launch this next poll. This is a series of 4 questions. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time here. And I want you to answer these 4 questions. Okay, so the first one is which increases learner persistence most? Is it more homework? A, B, immediate feedback, C, longer lessons, or D, more tests? The second question, what are adult learners most motivated by? Is it A, competition, B, relevance to real life, C, grades, D, rewards? Number 3, what is not a core gamification element? A, progress tracking, B, feedback, C, random activities, or D, clear goals? And 4, how do small wins help learners? Is it A, helps them to stay motivated, B, they get confused, C, slow down, or D, to avoid learning altogether? So let me give you about 5 more seconds to address those. Please no Christmas treeing this exam. All right. Okay, let's see what the results are here. Oh, you all are amazing. No wonder you're teachers. Okay, so yes, number 1, which increases learner persistence the most? Immediate feedback. Okay, so when we can provide that immediate feedback to learners, through formative assessment, through our activities, and we think about, how can we do that, right? How can feedback become more immediate? Okay, and we'll explore some of those things. Um, Number 2, what are adult learners most motivated by? Okay, and the correct answer is B, relevance to real life, right? So that is the kind of reward, right? When it's relevant and when it's addressing and supporting and building the competency and confidence to support their lives, that's the reward, right? And those that relevancy can lead to other, all kinds of different rewards, right? Whether they be monetary or emotional or relational or all these kinds of different rewards. Number 3, which is not a gamification element. So it's actually, you all chose correctly. The majority is actually C, random activities. Okay, so gamification is, again, we talked about clarity, right, and structure. So if we kind of like, it's almost like you're playing a game and then you think you know what the rules are, but then the rules are changed. You don't really like that game anymore, right? We get upset, all right, when that happens, when the rules have been changed on us. So, we were looking for routine, for consistency. This also helps, and I would say this makes it a little easier when we have certain gamified routines. That helps because we don't have to explain the kind of rules and the expectations over and over again. This goes towards building structure, right? Building clarity. And again, when we have clarity, when we have structure, when we have routine, this is how our brain becomes more relaxed, becomes more open and receptive to learning when we can predict what's happening. That lowers the cognitive load. It lowers our affective filter, right? Our stress levels. All of this is supportive of learning. And then finally, everyone got that correct. How do small wins help learners? Yes, these small wins help learners to stay motivated. And it helps us to stay motivated. One reason is because we see progress, right? And we get that kind of dopamine. And all of those things are so important for us to persist in the learning. We persist in things that even if they're hard, we enjoy them, right? We get some kind of reward back. And that gets kind of gets back to the reward, right? And I can see how some of you all chose rewards for number two. Um, but that's the if we can kind of, help learners to create these small wins. So that's something that we're going to discuss here in these subsequent slides, how to gamify activities so that they're designed uh, for learners to have these small wins. Okay, excellent. Okay, so as we touched on previously, one reason gamification works so well in adult education is that it aligns naturally with adult learning principles. Adults prefer learning that is practical, goal-oriented, relevant, and immediately applicable. The most effective gamified activities don't distract from learning. They strengthen these core adult principles. So let me ask you all, what motivates your learners in the classroom? Last time in the chat, we discussed what's the challenge. What are some things that motivate your learners in the classroom? If you can think about that for a second, the first thing that comes up, write that in the chat. So, while you're doing that, some examples can be, improving employment opportunities, right? And earning potential, supporting, providing for their families, earning a degree or an industrial credential, just increasing their confidence and independence, or improving certain skill sets for work or academia or some kind of community engagement. So let me see what you all have here. So what motivates your learners in the classroom? All right, Ruth says having fun, right? Yeah, get that energy up, right? It's when you're having fun, you're engaged. It's the right state of mind, right, that we want to have while we're learning. A sense of achievement. Absolutely, Betty. Okay, great. Javadia, real life experience. Yeah, seeing those connections. Sarah, fun and relevance. Mariela, immediate measurable gains. Stacy, sorry, Stacy, it's someone. Here we go. Yes. So Stacy says that she teaches GED prep. Test day provides motivation. Yeah, some serious external motivation there. Good. Improving on their language, seeing those results, seeing that improvement. Other support. That's great, Christina. Thanks for putting that. So, getting support. And I would say, not only receiving support, but also a motivator can be providing support, as well. Naomi, yes, friendly competition, right? Naomi says, since we sit for an hour, finding ways to be active without um, finding ways to be active, basically, right? And I think that's what Christina gets to when she says dynamic class. All right, excellent, excellent. Yeah, sharing experiences and feeling part of a community. All excellent, excellent observations. So here's the focus. Those motivations become powerful design opportunities for gamified learning experiences. Gamification should amplify these motivations and obviously not replace them. So one way to incorporate gamification into an ESOL classroom is through leveled speaking challenges. So this is one activity idea. So in this example, learners progress increasingly complex communication tasks. Learners progress through increasingly complex communication tasks rather than simply asking learners to practice speaking or do this task or have this role play. We create a visible pathway for growth, as we can see here in the slide. The gamified elements here are different levels. So a learner might begin by in level one, right? So let's all start in level one. Introduce yourself in a job interview. Establish eye contact, shake hands, use appropriate distance. So these are all very kind of, micro learnings, very attainable, kind of, I would say level one-ish, depending on your learners, obviously, a way to build confidence, right? To cultivate confidence and cultivate competency at a very attainable level. So once they demonstrate that skill, they move on to level two, asking and answering questions, for example, right? Answer and ask follow-up questions, uh, preparing for those questions, using confident gestures. You see how I'm using my hands here, right? So that's more level two, especially if we have learners that, haven't had that experience more and maybe their expectations haven't been around certain things like asking a follow-up question. Maybe that's something where, they haven't had that kind of, they don't come from a cultural context where that's the expectation. Or gestures, okay? Certain gestures can be different, such as like eye contact and spacing. So eventually they get to level three and they participate in a full role play conversation. They analyze performance based off of a rubric, okay, that we can give them. And they can practice again and extend with follow-up questions. And we can carry this forward to, level four, okay, to make it even more difficult. Eventually to, hey, let's apply this in the real world. Okay, that's the ultimate level there. So instead of, the key here is that what's important is that learners can see their progress and we're setting them up for success. And we're using these gamified elements in order to scaffold, right, and structure our lessons so we can pause, we can celebrate a win before moving on to the next level. So instead of our learners thinking, oh, my English isn't good enough, they begin thinking, hey, I completed level one and now I'm working on level two. There's that structure and that organization. This shift matters, right? Again, that research that we talked about with self-determination theory, it tells us that motivation increases when learners experience competence and progress. Every successful level reinforces the belief that improvement is possible. So they're right there. We're challenging that perhaps that preconceived notion that many adult learners have of that they can't do it, right? So we're directly proving and creating evidence that is not the case, that they can do it. So we can implement this with a simple checklist, a classroom chart, even index cards, and really no technology here is required. It's just a gamified element. So the key gamification element is progression. Learners know where they are and where they're going next. Okay, so this next activity, English missions, we're staying with ESOL here right now. So this is one of my favorite examples because it connects directly to real world goals that bring adult learners into our programs. Instead of completing isolated language exercises, learners complete missions. For example, a learner may have a mission to ask for directions, call for information about a job opportunity, schedule an appointment, or inquire about community resources, right? These are all almost like mission impossible, right? For many of our learners, or they're perceived in that kind of way, all right? They can be difficult. They take courage, they take preparation, they take planning, much like, our friends in the Mission Impossible movies. So the point is here is that the language practice becomes purposeful, right? All that preparation, all the learning is for a purpose. It's to accomplish the mission. So one of the strongest findings in adult learning research is that adults are motivated when learning connects, again, directly to their lives. When learners see immediate value in a task, engagement increases significantly. And so we can see that in this example that learners can choose which mission to complete. And that choice creates autonomy. As I said before, voice and choice, which is another key factor in motivation. The goal is not simply to learn English. The goal is to use English to accomplish something meaningful to our students. When learners experience success in authentic situations, confidence and persistence grow. Okay, so the next activity here is around ABE and GED for math. So math can sometimes be a difficult area for adult learners because many have had negative experiences with math in the past. All right, let me know in the chat. Has that been your experience with math? Did you have negative experiences with math? I can say yes, I have. Okay, so yes, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Stacy. So gamification can help by shifting the focus from abstract calculations to practical problem solving. In this example, learners complete weekly challenges involving budgeting, comparing prices, calculating bills, or making financial decisions. Again, rather than asking, when am I ever going to use this? Learners immediately see the relevance. And we might organize these activities into levels or weekly challenges. For example, level one, it might involve comparing grocery prices. Okay, easy enough. Level two could involve calculating monthly expenses. And level three might involve creating a personal budget. Again, as learners complete each challenge, they see tangible evidence of progress. This approach aligns with contextualized instruction, which research shows that it improves both engagement and retention because learners understand why this skill matters. The challenge itself becomes motivating because learners recognize its practical value. Okay, so this next activity is something that you can apply in class or online. All right, so this activity transforms reading comprehension into a problem-solving challenge. Instead of simply answering questions after reading, learners become detectives. Their task is to locate evidence in the text that supports their answers. So, for example, after reading a passage, learners might identify the main idea, support an inference, or justify a conclusion using information from the text. The focus shifts from guessing to investigating. And so, one way to make this even more engaging is to use a Jeopardy style format where teams earn points for finding evidence and explaining their reasoning. I just applied this application in a workshop, in-person workshop that I led, and you can see immediately that the friendly competition that you all mentioned in the chat, it immediately sparks engagement and motivation and energy, right? And focus. This gamified element, just this little kind of gamified element can just shift the energy immediately. And it can take a skill like reading that's a receptive skill and makes it into a more kind of like engaging, productive skill. And this supports several important literacy skills simultaneously. Learners practice skills such as scanning, critical thinking, and evidence-based reasoning. It also creates immediate feedback because learners can verify right there if their answers are correct. So most importantly, it turns reading again into an active process rather than a passive one. And so if you look at this one here, this Geopardy, this is a good one that you can use and build your own really nicely designed Jeopardy games. And Regina, yes, yeah, I did this engagement. It was awesome in RLA. Thanks, Regina. I'm so glad that you shared that. I appreciate it. Okay, so when people hear the word gamification, they often think that a high level of technology is required. Okay, in reality, some of the most effective gamification strategies are completely low tech. I've experienced this myself working in low to no tech classrooms, in the United States and in my time teaching in Vietnam, and have also heard, successful implementation from other educators, teaching particularly in correctional settings where there can be limited access, right, to technology. Actually, that Jeopardy game that I just showed you, a friend of mine who teaches in corrections uses that, just draws it up on the board and applies that gamified activity with great success with her learners. So what matters is not the technology. What matters is creating opportunities for progress, for challenge, for feedback, and for success. So this is one here that we can do right on the wall. It's called a progress ladder wall chart. And it uses one of the most powerful motivators available, visible progress. And the idea is simple. Create a ladder, staircase, pathway, or chart that represents increasing levels of skill development. For example, in any of our classes, but let's say an ESOL class, learners might progress from introducing themselves to asking questions to participating in extended conversations. So as we saw, those are different levels. We can mark those different levels so they become visible, right? And I don't know about you, but when I see something like a scoreboard or some kind of progress chart that's visible not only to me, but to everyone else, that ups my motivation, right? That matters. Okay, so that provides motivation to increase, and we can start to create some of that internal motivation as well as some of that external motivation through competition. So as learners demonstrate a skill, they might move to the next level. And so if they haven't demonstrated that skill, that also indicates to them and to us that some more practice is needed there, right? So we can give really specific and more focused instruction, individualized instruction to learners. And that's very clear. It's clear again to students and it's clear to us. So, this visual nature of the chart reinforces growth and achievement. Instead of focusing on what they can't do, learners see evidence of what they've already accomplished. So, see how far, right, up the ladder that you've come. This supports competence, which is one of the key motivational components identified in self-determination theory. A simple classroom chart can often be just as effective as a digital dashboard, sometimes more effective because, again, the public nature of it. Now, if you have a digital dashboard, see if you can make it public, right? As when I say public, to those in the classroom. So it can kind of provide that gamified element of ranking. I mean, I use that, right? I'm on, and I'll show you this later, but I'm on Duolingo. I don't know if you all like use Duolingo for language learning. I'm learning Turkish. And so you can see here, right? You can see my streak, right? You can see my consistency. Maybe you can't see that. But you can also see how I rank, right? Among other global learners of, in this case, Turkish. Okay, another activity is conversation cards. So a conversation card challenge introduces an element of surprise and challenge. Learners select a card that contains a communication task. Examples might include ask for help in a store, make a doctor's appointment, introduce yourself to a new coworker. The learner then completes the challenge and receives immediate feedback. All right. So I actually have, I'm going to post this in the chat. This is something that I used in my time working for the US Department of State. I'm going to share it with you all. Let me copy the link, get a link. Here it is. Okay. And I'm going to post in the chat so you have it. But this is a great, oops, sorry, that's not it. Wanted to send it to you all so you had it. Oops. Is it gonna let me? Ah, let me see. It's not letting me get a link. I'm so sorry, you all. But if you look at the on the web for Activate Games for Learning American English, and this is a teacher's manual, This actually has some excellent board games that you can create uh, very easily, all right? And then it has different games here, right? Name your favorite, use a word, what somebody does, would you rather, and it gives you board game templates, okay? Um, a lot of games here. So I encourage you to look this up. Activate Games for Learning American English. Okay, and you'll just kind of a great guide for teachers, and then it gives you example games here, example board games. Doesn't have to be complicated, right? Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate you. That's that community element that we were talking about there. Thank you so much, Ruth. Okay, another activity. I'm just hopefully you appreciate some of these activities here. I know as teachers that we can benefit from just activity ideas. In this case, really different activity ideas that apply gamified elements. So this next one here is a role play rotation game. So this activity combines movement, communication, and repetition. Some of you all identified that, you're sitting for so long, you need some movement in the classroom. And how this works is that we create several learning stations around the room, and each station represents a different scenario. For example, a job interview, a doctor's office, a store, a workplace interaction. Those different stations should come from our learners' real world needs, right? So this is where engaging in constant like needs engagement, needs analysis, conversations, understanding our learners really helps to inform what they're learning, how their learning is shaped. So learners rotate through the stations and complete each task. And the stations function like levels in a game. As learners move through them, they gain additional practice and confidence. One of the benefits of this approach is that learners practice the same skills multiple times, but in different contexts. And we all know that it's really about repetition, right? Reinforcement, analysis of understanding like what we're doing well, as well as like our gaps in ability and understanding, getting that feedback and then applying again. And this creates a gamified environment where it's allowing students to do that in a way where they're up and moving, they're engaging, and they're moving around to give them some variety, but they're coming back around to something familiar. So it's a really powerful strategy to apply in the classroom. And again, this repetition strengthens learning while the variety keeps engagement high. Another activity is beat your best system. So one challenge with gamification is avoiding unhealthy competition. All right. So the activity Beat Your Best System addresses that concern by focusing on personal growth rather than comparison with others. So if you see some kind of tensions happening, this is a way that you can provide to apply some gamified elements here for more individual competition, personalized, internal composition. So the goal is simple. Learners compete against their previous performance. Perhaps they improve their reading score. Maybe they complete practice problems, or they increase the length and complexity of a speaking task or a reading task. The emphasis on growth. And this approach reinforces a growth mindset and helps learners focus on improvement rather than perfection. For many adult learners, especially those who experience academic setbacks, this can be a powerful confidence building strategy. So I'm saying this, I'm, you know, remembering things that I hear about great athletes. And they, of course, competition and competing against someone that can provide motivation. But it's really about like competing against themselves, right? Always constantly getting better. Having a great coach, a mentor, people, a team around them, a community to point out, what they're doing well, but very importantly, like where they need to improve. Okay. So this kind of beat your best is so important to kind of internalize this understanding of the only people that we're really in competition with is just ourselves, right? And we can become empowered to always improve if we can fall in love with the learning progress and understand the system of this virtuous cycle, let's say, of learning. So let me ask you all, what low-tech gamified activities have you used successfully? Or what ideas from today's examples might you adapt for your own learner? So either one of those, right? Either some kind of low-tech gamified activities you've used successfully, just think about that. And if you can, something comes to mind, please share that uh, within our webinar community here. Or what ideas from today's examples that I've stated so far really kind of jumped out at you and said, hey, maybe I'm gonna try that to adapt it for your own learners. So Christina says, songs. Awesome. I love songs. Absolutely. Add songs to my lessons. There's a good webinar on IPDAE about using music and songs in learning. Stacy, scavenger hunts. Who doesn't love a good scavenger hunt, right? Gets us to investigate, to find, to locate, okay? Stimulates our primitive hunter-gatherer. All right, Betty, conversation cards. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Betty, and thanks for sharing that link as well. And Diane, station rotation. Excellent. Good conversation challenges. And Janine, we have role played skits. Excellent. Thank you all for sharing that. Okay, so getting towards the end of the webinar, but I did want to talk about some mobile tech options. Okay, so technology can be a powerful tool for gamification when it serves a clear instructional purpose. The goal is not to use technology because it's just merely available. The goal is to use technology to increase engagement, provide immediate feedback, and make progress visible. The tools we'll discuss here are particularly useful because they support independent practice, flexibility, and personalized learning. Okay, so not only within the classroom, but outside of the classroom, or if you're teaching online as well. So many adult learners already use mobile devices every day, and these tools can help leverage that familiarity to support learning. So as I mentioned before, one of the most successful gamification strategies used by language learning applications is the concept of a streak. A streak represents consecutive days of practice. The idea is simple but powerful. Rather than focusing on large accomplishments, learners focus on consistent participation. Even a few minutes of practice each day outside of the classroom contributes to this progress. And this aligns really closely with the research on habit formation. Small, consistent actions, right, often called atomic habits, are more sustainable than occasional large efforts. For adult learners with busy schedules, this is especially the case and especially valuable. The streak provides a visible reminder that progress occurs through consistency. As educators, we can apply this concept, right? So I showed you Duolingo is one for language. I'm sure they're out there for math and every other kind of skill. Um, and we can apply this even without using these mobile elements, okay? By encouraging learners to track daily reading, vocabulary practice, speaking activities. This is something just like that ladder wall chart. We can have learners mark kind of what their consistency, right? What their streak is. They're self-reporting there, but it gets that idea. Okay, and if we can have a little reward at the end, okay, then that can help too. And next we have level reading. So one of my favorite resources out there that I'm always blown away by is the Marshall level reading resource. They provide a natural opportunity for gamification because they already incorporate progression through increasingly challenging text. And I'm just gonna kind of show you this and drop this. This one I should be able to share the chat. And take your time with exploring this. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can make this a little bigger here. But you'll see here that there's a mobile app as well as desktop app. It has reading online, offline, anytime. Okay, these reading passages have different reading levels. First, second, third level, each reading becoming faster. All right. They have quizzes built in. They have Google Form quizzes for mobile, activity worksheets. They have these reading passages at different levels, as well as like built-in countdown timers to encourage reading speed and fluency. So just an amazing, amazing resource. You can see how the levels are um, leveled here. Okay, excuse me, the readings are leveled, and you can explore by topic. You can share this QR code, okay, with students. They can have download the app, the free app. So explore this. I'm just curious, have you all heard about the Marshall Level Reading Program? Yes or no in the chat, please. Just curious about that. All right, great. We have some yeses, a couple of yeses, and a lot of nos, and great. Okay, so if you haven't, this is an opportunity, and if you have, maybe a reminder. Okay, so let's revisit our objectives. So today we explored how gamification supports motivation and persistence. We examined ways to adapt gamified activities to meet different learning goals, and we reviewed strategies that support progression and skill mastery. My hope is that you've identified at least one practical strategy that you can implement immediately. And remember, we don't have to redesign our entire course. We should start small. We should add one element. We observe what happens and we build from there. Okay, so I just wanted to open it up for a little Q&A, and I'll be on the lookout for that. Feel free to either post in the Q&A or in the chat, either one. Let me just move my window here so I can see the Q&A. And as we're waiting for any questions, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. Your presence was felt. I really appreciate your engagement and participation in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me personally if you have any feedback or you want to talk shop some more. And please give IPDAE your feedback. You'll see that there's a feedback survey that we'd appreciate you taking really quickly. And while you do that, I wanted to remind you that there is going to be a webinar tomorrow, Webinar Wednesday, June 10th at 3 p.m. It is titled Right On, From Scribbles to Scores. Okay, so it sounds like there's some gamified elements there as well. Thank you again for your engagement and for your investment in your professional learning growth to support your learners. I wish you all a cool, peaceful, restful summer ahead. Thank you all so much.